going all out, about to start a war now. Second time around, so we doing it in style. It's all elite, not accepting defeat. A lot can change in 1 year, but more can change in 1 week. Believe the hype, the train's leaving tonight. Hit the throttle, we headed straight to Chicago. It's only getting better, this is our future endeavor. I can't wait.
Welcome back, All Elite family, to another exciting edition of Wednesday night's main event, the side podcast of the All Elite podcast, where we run down everything that happens on every week's Wednesday night Dynamite. And we are fresh off another episode of Dynamite. As always, I am joined by my boy, my co-host, Big Match AJ, pro wrestling enthusiast, anime nerd. AJ, how are you doing?
Things are going good. Not much the same. Not much new with me. All the same. Just writing and getting work done.
That's cool, man. Happy to hear that you're just continuing on with work and everything. I'm just getting excited for the holidays. Finally finished up all of my finals and stuff for school, so
Congrats.
Not a whole lot of college things to worry about, so that's exciting. Get a little bit of a break there. But this week we have the final episode of Dynamite before AEW takes their own bit of a break. And a very exciting one nonetheless. What were your thoughts of this episode of Dynamite going into their first break?
I liked it. I thought it was a really stacked card, so there was no way I was going to come out saying, "Oh, I hate it," unless they really screwed up. But no, I think they delivered. I think all the matches were really solid. I don't know. I was into it.
Yeah, I think that they really did deliver. They had a pretty solid card from top to bottom. I think, and they provided a really good alternative. And I think that just from the start, we start off the episode with Hangman Page and Kenny Omega teaming up against the Lucha Brothers in what was a pretty interesting match in and of itself. It was a pretty solid match. I was enjoying it just from the match itself. And then after the match, we get a little bit of a continuation of a storyline, but the Lucha Brothers end up picking up the win there in about almost 20 minutes. Really solid opener because, like I said, we just opened the show straight into this match. No entrances for either team. So that was one thing I took note of that I really enjoyed. Yeah. Like, we got right to the no shenanigans, and no one felt less than because all four men were in the ring to start the show, and that's something I would like to see them continue. They've definitely done it quite a few times, but they kind of had entrances, I think. Just start off no entrances every week. I think it would be unique, different, and I like it.
I really liked it. And like you said, I like that it wasn't just, one tag team is out and then we're going to get an entrance. Both guys in, ready to start the match, ready just to get to the action. And that's exactly what they did. And this was a long match, and it was a great, great opener.
Absolutely, a solid opener. All four guys looked fantastic. Omega and Hangman are always really good as a tag team. And I would have almost been interested to see them pick up a win here and start climbing the rankings before they started to tease this little bit of a turn here for Hangman. In post-match, Hangman and Kenny are arguing over the fact that they lost. Before they can really do much more than a shoving contest, we get Pac, who shows up on the screen. So I'm starting to pay off the fact that he wants his match with Omega, his rubber match. He's backstage and has Michael Nakazawa in the locker room just listening to music, not paying attention to what's going on. And we just assume that Pac is going to attack Nakazawa, and Omega totally drops what he's doing with Hangman and runs to the back.
Yeah, I thought that was great. The cut was a little weird. It seemed like they were shoving each other and they cut it at a weird point. Aside from that, it was really good. It was really well done. Pac just saying, I think you forgot what I can do and what I'm capable of, and just going to Nakazawa and presumably just beating the hell out of him. I'm kind of upset we didn't get an update on that later in the show. Not like, we had to see it, but the commentary saying we had an update on Michael Nakazawa, but we didn't get that.
Yeah, I was almost wondering if that was something I had totally missed, just in everything I have going on tonight. Just a lot of dinner and family holidays, like early stuff. But yeah, it was an interesting thing that to see just how they built up to this. I wasn't too sure or keen on Nakazawa being the big person that Omega needed to save. I mean, it makes sense. They don't really want to have Pac want to kill Riho because that's way too over the top. But so Nakazawa is the second best friend for Omega that would be that vulnerable. So it's fair. I just don't care for Nakazawa, so I think that's personally why I didn't love him and being involved. But nonetheless, I like where this is going, where we have the tease of Hangman and Kenny, but we're not really going all in on that. We can wait a little bit, and when it comes, it'll be wicked awesome.
Yeah, I was expecting honestly that Hangman would just lay him out, which didn't happen, and then you set it up for the next show on the first. But I'm not upset by this. I like it going a little slower. I like that there's more dissension, and you're kind of building to it properly because there is a ways away before that pay-per-view.
It is a nice slow build, and I think the reason that we might be wanting it so quickly is because if you are paying attention to being the elite and everything else that's going on, it feels like they've been doing it for a little bit. But if you're not, this is still pretty fresh to the fans, so this is the way that you continue to slow build that, and that's smart on them, that they're not just expecting it all to be knowledge from being the elite. They're building it on television as well. Just for people like us who are paying attention to so much, it can feel like a little bit drug out, but it's really not, and it's going to be an interesting story that they're building to here. Hopefully we get the blow off with Pac, and what an interesting trio of guys that are working together almost since the start of AEW.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't say it any better. It's just a really nice way to build this up.
Yeah, so it's just nice to see a fresh, different type of build here, and like I said, eventually we'll hopefully get that payoff with Hangman and Kenny, and that'll be really interesting. So, from there we get Cody and Darby Allin teaming up to take on the Butcher and the Blade. Cody and Darby picking up the victory with pretty much not with ease here, honestly. 11 minutes.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of effort they had to put into it. A pretty solid match though, nonetheless. I think it kind of just goes down to what I was expecting, where if Darby and Cody won, you kind of negate everything we've got from the Butcher and the Blade to this point, and I really feel like that's kind of what this did.
Yeah, it definitely killed the heat with the Butcher and the Blade, and that's the thing I hate the most about this. I get it, and I get the booking. So I'm not gonna poo-poo this like that much, but it's I don't know. I can't think of another option off the top of my head, so I'm not gonna critique it too hard. But I wish there was another way they could have thought about doing this to where it wouldn't kill their heat so badly, or even. And I know they don't like DQ finishes, but I don't know if the Butcher and the Blade just totally ignored the count or something and just went off on them and just beat the hell out of them.
Yeah, I do like that it was at least a clean finish to build up to that Cody and Darby rematch. There we go. Brief technical difficulties, but beyond that, yeah, this match with Cody and Darby, though, I do appreciate the clean finish just to set up Cody versus Darby. That feels like a pretty important match to me. So it not being that disqualification finish, I can understand you wanting to do something like that to keep the Butcher and the Blade fresh.
Yeah,
but
something, because I don't have something off the top of my head, but I like you said, I do appreciate that finish, but it just I wish they looked into some other option.
Even like a post-match attack, sort of destroying Cody and Darby, setting up a future tag team match again after you get that Cody and Darby match out of the way. It would be an interesting way to sort of continue all of that. But you do also have to sort of get Cody out of these feuds and ready for MJF.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, a decent match for Cody and Darby. As I said, it sets up Cody versus Darby, which I have to assume we'll get on that first of the year episode.
I would hope so. That would be a perfect time for it.
Absolutely. And then from there, we get a Jungle Boy training video. So they did quite a bit throughout this episode to hype up Jungle Boy and promote him and put him over as a potential competitor. Something I like that they've done, but I wish they would do it more consistently so it didn't feel like it was forced on just him. And I hope that they just continue it going forward.
Yeah, I do too. I really like these kind of it was like a training montage with other video effects elements like strung into it, and the audio of him going, "You'll never last 10 minutes with me." And it just really built up, I was going to say Jack Perry, Jungle Boy, very, very well. And like you said, I just hope we get more of these in the future.
Yeah, I think it does a good job at promoting a match just on that show, on this card, and it didn't take a whole lot of time. It's maybe 1 or 2 minutes long
Yeah.
in total, and then they did another one a couple takes later. So it's cool. It's nice to see something like that, and again, I just want to see it done consistently. If this match weren't on the card, maybe have done something like this for the tag team match throughout the whole show. Just something like that every time you have a big main event, promote it this way. So it was really interesting and fresh to see that. From there, we get Awesome Kong taking on just a victim.
They didn't give her a name.
Yeah, just a random person, which is cool. I mean, the commentary did mention her name. I didn't get it, but Excalibur did briefly mention it. But nonetheless, a quick finish for Awesome Kong. Really nothing too exciting. Brandy and Melanie Cruz were at ringside accompanying Awesome Kong. So, yeah, it was just a big squash and a good way to continue this Brandy and Kong thing. So they cut off a piece of this woman's hair. Just continuation of this feud that they have going on. Not even a feud, it's more or less a story, I guess, that they're building up to.
I'm just happy that they're giving Awesome Kong matches because I want her on those rankings if she's going to be a prominent figure in the women's division. And it's clear she is, and it's clear that down the line she's going to be in the title picture. So with that said, I don't mind it being job matches because that's what she should be doing anyways. You need to build up a monster. And I won't even mind if she beats some people this quick, like, I don't know, Shanna or Sadie Gibbs or something, just anybody, because it'll make her look more and more of that monster.
Yes, absolutely. Just doing these things to continue to put over people like Awesome Kong is a really well done thing that they've done, and I'm excited to see Awesome Kong really start to be incorporated into AEW, hopefully more consistently, actually on television wrestling rather than in the vignettes just to promote her. They've done a good job, I guess, at putting over the story that they want to put over, but now being able to see her actually in action and get over her being a monster in the ring and put that over for the fans is the best way to...
It puts it over so much better than the vignettes.
Yeah, absolutely, and she works so well. She's such a talented wrestler, and one thing that's worth noting is that she has been around for a while. She's been a wrestler that we've been familiar with for 10, 15, 20 years, like 10 to 15 years at least. So with that being said, she's getting older, so it is a good idea to utilize her while you can, and utilizing her in this way where she's doing quick matches, it's almost like not utilizing her at all, essentially, because it's only a minute or two. She goes out there, quick squash. So good way to do that.
Yep.
And as I stated before, we get another Jungle Boy segment. He's being interviewed by Jim Ross, and it was a cool little segment here. We get just Jim Ross asking a couple of questions. Jungle Boy talks about how he respects the legend of Jericho, but he's not really respecting the man that Jericho is, and he knows that his dad would be proud of this whole thing that he's got going for himself. So that was really cool as well.
Yeah, it was the perfect position for JR too. I love JR in these little interview segments where he can just sit down with the talent and dive into the matches and what's going on. I think it's just the perfect role for him, and it always helps the talent. So that's my biggest takeaway is I was just so happy to see JR into this role, and it did so much for Jungle Boy in such a short amount of time. This maybe was a minute, not like maybe a minute and a half, and it did a world of good for him.
Yes, exactly. A good utilization of their time and a good utilization of Jim Ross as well. I wouldn't mind if they did utilize someone like Chris Van Vliet or just any of the other figures like that in this type of role if they wanted to do it weekly. So that way they weren't having to use Jim Ross in so many different roles, just have him focus on his commentary. But do like a weekly interview segment, again, just sort of promoting your main event, what you have going on, getting that exposure for different people on the mic that maybe haven't gotten that opportunity, that are being featured in main events, like Sammy Guevara, for example. Just people like that who they could become fans could become more familiar with them, and you're only using 1 or 2 minutes. And at the end of the day, what does that hurt? Especially if you start opening your show simply with no entrances going right to the match. There's your 1 or 2 minutes. So,
yeah. Absolutely. It's common sense to do it, and I'm glad that I don't want to say that I'm glad they're doing it because I don't know if they're going to keep doing it, but I hope it's a trend that they just keep on with because this will do so much for the talent we're not so familiar with, who, because you have a roster full of people who you got to get over, you don't really know them that well, and this is the perfect way to do it.
Yeah, this is a fresh way for them to incorporate that new face and help fans see something or someone different that they might not be so familiar with. And it's just nice to see that they know that they've done it. So
Yeah.
it can be done and hopefully will be done in the future consistently or semi-consistently, especially with people you're not as familiar with or bigger matches. Like we've got a Darby and Cody match to be looking forward to. It would be really awesome to see a Cody interview on this match or a Darby interview even. Like if they don't want to use Darby in that manner, you can have Cody do an interview and put that match over even more than Darby probably could. So it just
Yeah.
matches like that. A short interview every week to sort of get fans accustomed to that and used to that, I think would be really beneficial. I think
Super beneficial.
if you look at NWA Power, something that's been really popular with
Yep.
fans on YouTube, it's been because they've been able to cut those promos and do
Mm-hmm.
something different, but it's been consistent. You've been consistently looking forward to that segment. If we put this segment in that and you do it every week, it will be good to great every week, and fans will become used to it and they will love it. So,
And
well done to them for doing that this week.
and you know what else I noticed? They not just the sit down interview, but constant interviews where you have these guys coming away and after the match or whatever, having Tony Schiavone go down and talk to them. And if you and I know that's a very WCW thing to do, but it's something that worked and it worked for a reason, for that exact reason that you have these people talking in that short amount of time about what is going on.
Absolutely, and you can even attribute that to a UFC thing as well because they just do
Yeah.
post fight interviews right after the fight too. Um, and as you said, that's something they sort of incorporated into this. They cut from this interview into the match, which was great because it really got you excited for the match. We lead right into the match. It's a 10-minute non-title match, which was an interesting match. You either loved it or you hated it. I think that it didn't do the best job at putting Jungle Boy over, but they did put Jungle Boy over in the sense that he didn't lose. It was confusing to some fans because I think some people were thinking that maybe he even won by countout.
Yeah, it
That's
did seem
actually
that way.
not the case. They had to confirm later on in the show, official
Hmm.
confirmation that Jericho and Jungle Boy actually went to a draw, a time limit draw. So Jungle Boy doesn't have a victory, but does have a draw with the champion. And you would have to expect that this leads to a match again next week. But the match itself, not bad. They go the full 10 minutes. Jericho has Jungle Boy locked in a lion tamer for nearly a minute and a half.
Yeah.
They hit the draw. Jericho demands 5 more minutes. They start wrestling, and again, this is why fans are confused because they're wrestling, and you think that the match has been
Hmm.
reset. And from there, Jungle Boy looks like he's about to win off of a couple of cradles and things like that. Jericho just dips, grabs the championship belt, and leaves. He ends up returning to do an interview with Tony Schiavone, as AJ said. So, what did you think of all of this?
I like the match itself. The post match stuff, I'll get into in a second. The match itself, I thought did a very good job. It made Jungle Boy seem resilient and like a fighter, and that he just wouldn't give up because this is his moment. And I know some people won't like, and I know you don't like it either, that the Lion Tamer was locked in for so long and he wouldn't tap out. But I thought, okay, two things you can do here. One, you can make him pass out that 10-second mark, or you can have him just fight through it and make him look like he will not let his chance go by. And I liked it. I thought it made him look really good. I thought it made him look, I don't know, cool. I was just into it. The post match I was not as into because one, it was confusing because they did ring the bell. If Jericho had said, "Give me 5 more minutes, give me 5 more minutes," and then went back into the ring and no bell rang, I would have been way more okay with it because then you could have had Jungle Boy roll him up for another unofficial 3 count. You could have had him just get, stopped. The post-match stuff was confusing and a little awkward to me, but the match itself I liked a lot.
Yeah, the post match left a lot to be desired. The match itself, you're not wrong. I didn't really love how everything went. I do like that they are at least putting Jungle Boy over in a sense again that he didn't lose to the champion. He lasted that 10 minutes, but it was essentially booked that it was only a matter of time before he lost, either by passing out or tapping out. And yes, he might be so resilient that he would pass out or get snapped in half, but regardless, it's undeniable that he was done for in the sense that he was locked in for a minute and a half and had done essentially nothing to get out of it. Almost got the ropes, got pulled back in, and locked in even tighter. So in that aspect, he essentially lost. I mean, we just saw Cody Rhodes have the towel thrown in him with this exact same situation, probably the almost exact same time frame. So in that respect, I was like, I wish there was a little bit more for Jungle Boy. Another thing that you can't really blame on anybody is that Jungle Boy just looked so much smaller in this ring compared to Jericho. And Jericho has come from the ground up of being one of those guys who initially was the small guy when he came into wrestling. And it's not a knock on Jungle Boy, and it's not even something I'm saying that he needs to change. It's just very apparent. So when he's not in there wrestling at a quick pace and going with Jericho, like working circles around him almost at points, it feels like he's just being beaten by Jericho from almost top to bottom. There was not too many points outside of a couple roll-ups, a nice backstabber, things like that we really were looking at a point where Jungle Boy looked like he was going to steal one here.
Yeah, that's fair. I was just looking at it in the lens. Jungle Boy is getting his ass kicked, but he's not giving up. And that's what, I don't know, pulled me in.
That's fair, and honestly, that's probably the story that they're trying to tell, which is probably more realistic in the whole grand scheme of things than what I would have preferred. It's just that that's probably what I would have more enjoyed from it. But nonetheless, it is great to see Jungle Boy put in that position, hopefully going to get a rematch. And again, after the 10 minutes, once the things got reset, Jungle Boy was looking to gain that advantage on Jericho again and maybe steal one. So it was refreshing to see him at least get some type of offense in the closing minutes before Jericho decided to exit quickly. And again, if it wasn't just so confusing, we do have Jericho, like I said, he returns to ringside, he throws a fit, he gets interviewed by Tony Schiavone, and Jericho says that Jungle Boy didn't beat him. He says that Jon Moxley has an invitation to join the Inner Circle. He knows Moxley's answer, and they're going to have tons of surprises for him, and all Moxley has to do is say yes, and then he says, "Merry Christmas, Mox," from everyone in the Inner Circle. So just another Jericho promo here.
Yeah. It was solid. I kind of didn't like how he went to the Jon Moxley stuff because I felt like the focus should have been on Jungle Boy and just that continuing tantrum. But nonetheless, I understand why they did it. You want to get it in at least because Jon Moxley was not on the show. So yeah, it was just, like you said, another Jericho promo.
Yeah, something I agree with you that it did kind of take that focus off of Jungle Boy. It was something that I sort of felt the last time that Jungle Boy had that interaction with Jericho, or one of the first times maybe, where the whole vibe was pulled off of him and onto something totally else with Jericho. And this was totally that again, where the match just ended and we're totally, you don't even see Jungle Boy leave. He just sort of disappears from everything that's going on, apparently sneaking off from the side of Jericho because he didn't want to interrupt his promo, which, it makes sense, but it's still, a little weird. He cuts his promo and says that Moxley's going to join the Inner Circle, so it'll be great when Moxley attacks and doesn't join. So, yeah, decent build there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then we get a good little promo from SCU talking about how they're the team to beat in AEW. The Lucha Brothers come in. Pentagon mocks Christopher Daniels for his botch, and Christopher Daniels dips out.
Yeah, that was solid and quick. It kind of does that thing that you and me don't like, where you're clearly telling us who's going to win the match because you're clearly building up to Lucha Brothers and SCU, which we already knew, but that's not the point. The point is you shouldn't be doing these kind of, I don't know. I didn't like it just because it kind of just puts the wrong foot forward at the wrong time to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't necessarily get that vibe entirely, especially because I could easily see the Bucks pick up the titles and then feud with Pride and Powerful over the belts. Meanwhile,
And then
SCU
go to,
takes on the Lucha Brothers in non-title situation, and that would be totally fine too, especially with them attempting to continue to tell stories without the titles having to be involved, and that sort of seems what they're doing here with this Christopher Daniels botch on Pentagon and all of that. So just cool to see that they're furthering that, and hopefully, again, we maybe get that Lucha Brothers, SCU, Young Bucks triple threat tag, because that would be cool.
I would love that so much.
And then after that, we get Chris Statlander taking on Britt Baker for the #1 contendership to the Women's Championship. And to our surprise and our excitement, Chris Statlander picks up the win to become the #1 contender in about 10 minutes. This was a really interesting match just because Chris picks up the win, something you and I were both really excited for. What were your thoughts on this match, AJ?
Loved it. The match itself, I wasn't. There was something going on, so I didn't have full attention to it. So I don't want to say the match was great. I love the finish. The finish being that Chris Statlander beat Britt Baker in a total upset. And my God, I was just so excited that our girl won, man.
Yeah, this is one that I'm going to have to go back and watch as well. I did have a little bit going on. I did catch the finish as you did. I do just want to, because the fact that we put over so hard that Britt needed to be able to go in this match and hang with Chris in the sense that she could make Chris look like a viable contender, make Chris look good, and really show her stuff as that workhorse and potential lead person in the whole division. So that's why I'm going to have to make it a point to watch this one, just because I'm with you. I didn't totally catch the whole thing, not intentionally, just how things ended up going on. But nonetheless, it was cool to see Chris pick up that win. Something I did not expect to happen, but when she hit her finish, I was like, oh man, is this really going to be?
Yeah.
And within that thought process, the 3 had already happened. So cool for Chris to be #1 contender going up against Riho, and they did a great job at building a legit contender for Riho to probably Rio's going to retain, you would have to assume, especially not seeing Riho much. So you have to think that reign could continue, and this is a great notch in her belt when she does pick up this win.
Yeah, if Chris Statlander, and we'll get to it, had joined the Nightmare Collective, I would have been like, oh my God, are they really going to pull the trigger on Chris being the champion? But because that didn't happen, I'm very certain that Rio's going to win. But who knows? But
you were pretty certain Britt was going to win, even though we were pulling for Chris. So
there you go. Yeah.
It is refreshing though, and this is probably one of the first cases where I can talk about where they've really made a new superstar that I wasn't too familiar with. Something we had said maybe with Darby or MJF that they were building up to, but Chris is the real first fresh face of that I'm excited to see, and I'm excited for her match with Riho, because we were talking about if Britt could elevate Chris to a good match, you know that Riho will elevate Chris to a good match. So that's going to be a fun one to watch and really exciting to see. And just cool to see, like I said, that they're able to build someone in essentially like a month and a half, and they're willing to go with what the fans are feeling in that sense. Like, Chris is getting over, so just run with the match because you need to do it.
Yeah. Absolutely. They're pulling the trigger on the people who they should be pulling the trigger on, and it's great.
Yeah, so it's cool to see, and like I said, we'll get to see Chris versus Riho. Something I would like for them to do, we're talking about these interview things, is do interviews with Chris leading up to this match in any way that you can, and get them on your social medias and then on the show itself to lead up to that potentially being your main event, and sort of promote that the same way. Promote it the same way they did the tag team main event tonight. Be like, this is where we care about women's wrestling too, so that's why they're the main event.
That's what worries me, though. Exactly what you just said. Interviews with Chris, because as much as I love Chris Statlander in the ring, from what I've seen and heard of her and beyond, from what I've seen and heard of her on AEW Dark, and anytime she promos, she's not there yet. And it's totally fair. I'm not saying, oh, she's a bad promo, she'll never get better. I'm saying right now, she's a bad promo. She's only been doing this 2 years, and she needs work. And so the interviews would help her. And so in that regard, they should do them. But it's also going to be walking a fine line of, oh, don't kill the heat.
Yeah, and it is tough with her because, as you say that, I remember she kind of has this alien type gimmick where they tried to do a bit of an interview with Chris, and she just sort of made a noise and or barely even was able to respond before she was interrupted by Brandy.
Which
Anyway,
was smart.
yes,
That was very smart.
but she just sort of has this alien gimmick or whatever she's trying to put out. And if that's the thing, you don't really want to hear promos from her. But if it's just a natural story of, man, 6 months ago I was barely into wrestling and now I'm in front of all these fans and this is so cool, like that could be a really interesting story for people to see and would be nice to see. So
did you hear her promo on Dark?
no, I did not. So
it was along the lines of, "You puny humans, I'm going to have the galaxy wrap around me," and like very Ultimate Warrior.
I
and
love
it sounded you think you love it, but the cadence that she delivered it was so like, oh, this isn't right.
I'm all
like
in on Chris even
it's
more
something
now.
I could totally be into, but she needs the work.
You puny human.
Yeah.
But yeah, as we stated, Tony Schiavone goes to interview Chris post-match. Doesn't get much of an interview in as Brandy arrives. She dismisses Tony. She asks Chris if she's going to join them or not. Chris Statlander refuses. And what, does she end up getting attacked by Brandy from behind?
Yeah, Brandy takes off the heel and hits her with it.
Yeah, she tried to kill her. So Chris Statlander not getting the best reception after denying introduction into this group, which is interesting. You sort of put the way she was promoing made it sound like they were going with the heel gimmick for her, and she's just going to tote that line is what it seems like.
Yeah.
But nice to see that she's not just going to join Brandy's group and become another piece to Brandy's group, because that is something you could see in other companies where, oh, she's fresh and Brandy's group isn't, and she's getting over and Brandy's group isn't. Throw it together, that'll get them over. And instead it would just kill Chris. So this is a good way to sort of extend Chris.
It would totally kill Chris. And this is a person who the fans are getting behind, has had consistently good matches. Like you said, we both have to go back and rewatch that one, but I'm not going to assume that it was bad. So I'm just excited for this woman's career.
Yeah, she's been impressive, and it's been refreshing just to see someone new and something new on AEW, and it's cool to see it in the women's division where it wasn't that it wasn't a deep division, it's just that we weren't totally informed about what they had under contract, and it's because they didn't really have a ton of people under contract until we started TV, and a lot of the people that they've used for TV, they've done a good job at selecting because most of them have become frequent talent.
Yeah, and it's been very, very, I don't know how to say, just the opposite of disappointing. It's just been uplifting to see how well they've managed this division. And I know so many people don't like this division, but I would just have to doubt that line of thinking. I would love to talk to somebody in an honest conversation who doesn't like the women's division to really understand why that is, because honest to God, I think they're doing such a great job at building these people up.
Yeah, especially if they've paid enough attention, and I get that it would take a little bit of involvement of maybe paying attention to the Dark results or watching Dark to really understand, because a lot of these women haven't been featured on television too frequently, and it hasn't really been until the last couple episodes that we have gotten really consistent women's matches on television, because we would get one or two Nyla Rose matches. Those were usually pretty quick, and maybe one or two other matches, but not a lot, and it's even still not a ton. But so I do understand that people aren't totally familiar with what's going on, but nonetheless, everything that they've done so far with the women's division has been really interesting and different and cool to see, like building up Emi Sakura and building up Hikaru Shida and building up Britt and building up even Nyla's situation within that division, and then Chris as well. They've done a really good job and a phenomenal job with the women's division, almost as a tester to see what you can do in these other divisions within the men's division. Like, can we really bring in a brand new face to the company and potentially make them a championship contender in a month and a half? And with your rankings, you can. And with the proper reaction from the crowd, you can. And so that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then after that attack from Brandy, we get Shawn Spears backstage with Tully Blanchard. They're just continuing their talk about how they're looking for the perfect partner for Spears, and Tully says he's going to find him the guy. So it appears that Kip Sabian will not be that guy. Not too sure on who Spears' guy will be. Spears, it's a good spot for him to go into the tag team division. I wonder if somehow they'll try and throw Janela in with him, because
I was going to say, if it's Janela, I'm going to have an aneurysm.
it would just be an annoying way of booking, because I get it where he'll be like, you're just a badass and I want to team with you, and Joey will be like, sure. But I just don't love it. But at the same time, if Spears is looking to build a tag team, Janela would then also have to build a tag team. If not, which you could easily throw him with Havok or whatever. But I am curious who Spears' guy will be.
I kind of didn't like this because I feel like, what are we focusing on with Shawn Spears? Are we focusing on Joey Janela? Focusing on this tag team thing? Just tell me what's going on and don't flip-flop it.
That's the problem. I do agree with you that every week it seems to flip-flop with these guys. One week we have Janela randomly accepting Moxley's challenge and being in the main event, which does, I get it, from a total logic aspect. It makes sense that he can just accept a random challenge and on all of this. But there's just so much, like, one week we're focused on Janela and Spears and one week we're not. But they're always both on in some capacity, like either Janela's on or Spears is on. Every week they're on one of the shows, but we're not always continuing their feud, and it's just become so weird that this feud could even possibly still be going on and still feel like so little has happened.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. So little has happened, and it's happened inconsistently, so that there's just no heat for this rivalry.
And the difficult part is it, you're right, because you don't really want to be too invested in who Shawn Spears' partner is going to be, because he's still involved with Janela, so you just have that PTSD as a WWE fan thinking that it's going to randomly be Janela for no reason.
Yep.
So, I mean, nonetheless, I do like where this is going, because I like that Spears really put over the tag team division. He was like, tag team wrestling is important here. It's in the main event here. Like, they really emphasized tag team division and him looking for a partner that could help him and that he could improve with or whatever. So it will be interesting just to see if it's going to be a new face, if it is someone like Janela, or what they do.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're doing with that. So at least in that regard, it's interesting.
Yeah. From there, we get a Young Bucks video package talking about the importance of tag team wrestling. They also talk about how they really haven't proven that they're the best wrestling in all of wrestling, even though they talk about it. And they talk about that they're the best friends with SCU, but tonight is their time. They also have the cringy statement of, at Christmas, are you guys going to be mad when we have our title belts at Christmas dinner? And you get it, they're friends, and they're so close that they're family and show up to each other's houses on Christmas. But that part I just thought was a little like, come on. But it was exactly what I want. We build up to our important matches with interviews and promos and segments like this that make it more realistic. And the Young Bucks are pointing out the fact that, hey, we haven't been the best team in AEW. We've lost quite a bit, but we've been on a good run. So now we're at the top. And if we lose, we'll be right back at the bottom. So,
yep. I thought it was a great video package, and I thought the match that followed emphasized that perfectly, because you will have the Young Bucks at the bottom. You will have the Young Bucks starting from scratch, and it kind of makes you want to root for the Young Bucks again, because now you actually have them not just as these guys steamrolling over the tag team division, but guys who have lost to a lot of guys and who are kind of not at the bottom, but they're definitely not at the top.
yeah, and it was nice to see this build into their match with SCU, because while they should be considered one of the best tag teams in wrestling, they really haven't been super consistent in AEW. So this was a way to emphasize, hey, we've been on a run, though, and we probably could beat SCU.
Yeah.
So it gives that rub to SCU beating this team going into this match. It wasn't like they just got into a title match all out of nowhere. It really, so it adds something for SCU to pick up this win. It was a little bit surprising and something that we were rooting for to happen, and we were glad that it happened. And it does add that big win next to SCU that sort of emphasizes them as a legitimate tag team. I would like to see them build on this now and get quite a few more championship defenses as a tag team. I don't necessarily want to see SCU be the first to drop a title in terms of the champions that are in AEW. Because if they can beat like the Lucha Brothers and maybe one other team, they can be solidified as a legit top team in this company throughout the whole going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. They with a company where tag teams are so emphasized, your first tag team champions need to be that same way, just emphasized as the tag team. And I feel like if they just, like you said, get those few more matches, get those few defenses in, they will be more and more the tag team.
Yeah, so they've done a good job at that. This was again a good job at sort of building up the Young Bucks to be legitimate competitors, and then you have your champions win over those legitimate competitors. Sort of what I want to see happen with Riho and Statlander. So it's cool to see the way of their booking and the way that they are able to make their champions like look more legitimate by beating these competitors or these contenders that they made earn contenderships. They didn't just get a championship match by coming out and saying, I want a championship match. It even does something to build up Jungle Boy's potential at a championship match down the line by having this draw with Jericho. Jungle Boy still doesn't have an official victory in AEW, but had a draw with the champion. So maybe he'll be able to start working his way up the ladder with a victory on the first show of the year. So it was a cool match and a cool main event, and good to see SCU pick up that win.
Great main event. Thought they both did really well. Wasn't too long, which was fine considering how we had a really long tag match earlier. But great main event. I don't know how I feel about the post-match stuff, but the main event itself was very, very well done.
It almost caught you off guard, and it's probably a thing why it's a good reason that they've sort of cut it so close with the time limit every week, is because this week I wasn't expecting a win so early, and when the win happened, it was totally understandable. I was like, okay, some shit's about to go down, but I was still like, oh wow, there was a win there, especially with the company that you see a lot of near falls or kick out of finishes. I was expecting a kick out here and didn't get it, but it was a viable finisher for the victory, so it all made sense in the grand scheme of things. It caught me off guard.
Yeah.
Good finish though, good to see SCU win. Again, like you said, a really short match. The reason being is post-match we need the Dark Order to come out and destroy everyone. They say that they're here for an initiation. We then get the Creepers and John Reynolds and what's his name? Alex Silver?
Alex Reynolds and John Silver.
Alex Reynolds and John Silver attack SCU and the Young Bucks. Christopher Daniels comes up and gets destroyed. Kenny Omega comes out and gets destroyed. Cody and Dustin come out and get destroyed. They put over the fact that Hangman never comes out to make the save. The Dark Order clears the ring. Reynolds and Silver receive their official Dark Order masks. And then Evil Uno stuffs his fingers down Matt Jackson's mouth. And that closes out Dynamite for the year.
Yeah, I think he was stuffing his fingers down his mouth because they were bleeding and he was showing off the blood. He made it sound sexual.
Well, I don't know what he's doing, but he's just shoving fingers down his mouth. So
that's true. He's sorry he got in trouble for that.
So it was an interesting finish. The Dark Order, it wasn't so bad as the first time we saw the Dark Order do a big shocking surprise, but it wasn't.
I don't think I like Evil Uno's delivery. I think that's what gets me. I don't like his promo, I guess. And it always sounds so corny.
Like an evil character in a video game.
Yeah.
Which worked with his original gimmick, but probably doesn't work anymore, is kind of the issue. But yeah.
I like the narrator guy from the vignette.
The other thing is just that Reynolds and Silver don't matter at all. Yeah. So, granted, they look good joining the group. Like, they have a new look and they look different. And almost seeing them do this, it was cool for them and something different for them. but it didn't, like, I don't care about this team. They've only been featured maybe 4 times up to this point, and this is how we're closing out the last show of the year. I just was hoping that there would be something a little bit more exciting, and I don't know what that could have possibly been, but I mean, at this point, you really could have had Marty involved in some way because he's popping up everywhere, so he's obviously had a contract you could have gotten. There are other things that you could have done that could have been really exciting and shaken things up in wrestling a little bit. Killer Cross contract just came up. That would have been something interesting. I know a lot of people aren't familiar with him, but he's really talented and really popular in that scene. So that would have been something interesting to set up as well, closing out the show. Instead, it was simply just Reynolds and Silver, which they did a good build to. This was essentially exactly what we asked for again. But I always just want a little bit more, especially on these shows that I feel should be important. Your go-home shows. This is your go-home show for the whole year. And I really came out of it just like, dang, it was just the Dark Order that closed out the show.
Yeah, and it was a good show, but I totally feel what you're saying. I do want to preface, over this past week, I've been watching a lot of indie wrestling, and I've been seeing Alex Reynolds and John Silver pop up, not as a tag team, but in singles competition. So I was getting more over on them just because I saw how really good they are. Like, honest to God, great talents. But they haven't done anything on AEW to really build them up much, which makes sense. They're jobbers, and that's the gimmick. But you gotta, like you said, it doesn't really shake things up. It doesn't really leave you necessary. I know that the goal was to leave you wanting more and to go, oh man, what's gonna happen next? But that really didn't do this for me.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, and it does a lot for Reynolds and Silver, and the fact that I do care about what they do next, because I would like to see them elevated in some capacity by this, by utilizing all of this time and effort on them, and they did do a decent job at that. It just leaves a little bit to be desired when it's the last thing we'll see for this year. And that was sort of a point I wanted to make in this show, or covering this episode, is saying that this was a good episode of Dynamite, maybe even a really good episode of Dynamite, but it's your last show of the year, and we're going into a week off, so I just expected a little bit more and wanted a great show. And that's not to say that this show didn't deliver. Every match gave me what I was expecting, essentially, in terms of the match quality and every part of enjoyment I would have wanted. They literally gave me everything I asked for. So it wasn't a bad episode in any way, shape, or form. Just the Dark Order thing. You want something a little like more exciting. Like, the thing that sticks with me and bums me out a little bit is I feel like the Moxley thing, when they first debuted Moxley, they maybe should have held it in their pocket a little longer, because it feels like it's been a long time since we've gotten that type of shocking announcement. I know you can't provide that on a week-to-week or even a monthly, bi-monthly, you can't do that all the time. I get that, but it does leave something to be desired in professional wrestling when it's these important shows where we're going off the air for a week, or we're doing this, or we're doing that. So
and like you said, if you had Marty Skrull at the end of this show, that would be a game changer.
Just something to have people really talking, and I don't think that the Dark Order is going to have too many people outside of your just AEW fans talking. And of course, AEW fans are going to be talking about it in the sense you either love it or you hate it. You like the way that they've built up to it, and I think that they've done a lot better with the Dark Order. So it was a fine finish in a way to, again, continue to build them up by putting them in that prominent position. It just, as a fan right now, you want it a little more. But in the future, it will help the Dark Order, and hopefully they'll start to rack up some wins as a unit going forward.
Yep. I would hope so, because now going forward, I can really see the Dark Order as a viable team and a good top heel team. I just wish Eva Luna would kind of dial it back.
Yeah, I have to agree, and I do just hope that maybe it'll be that show on the first of the year where we get Marty or Killer Cross or some type of surprise like that.
Oh yeah.
So I can't blame them for not ending the year that way if you're gonna start off next year with a bang, which may even be a better idea because you want to bring in viewers that you might have lost in that week off. So I'm not upset about it. Again, it was a really good episode and nothing bad or nothing to complain about really too over the top. What would be your Wednesday night's main event, AJ? What was your favorite match of the night?
It's tough because all these matches were really good, but I think for me it was that opener, just how great that tag team match was.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were almost going to go out on a ledge and say that Jungle Boy versus Jericho was your match of the night. And I
It
would have
had me on the edge of my seat, man, but
I
I
wish
don't
that
know.
they could have just finished it a little bit better and not had it be so confusing as well when you have to
Yeah.
go back and explain what happened in an important match later on in the show. It can be a little bit off-putting. But I'm right there with you. That opening match with the Lucha Brothers and Kenny Omega and Hangman, they did a really good job, just the four of them. And that's sort of the thing about this show, too, is it wasn't the sense of it was a bad show. It wasn't the sense of there was even any bad matches. It was just there wasn't even a really great match, like a match that
Yeah.
had you talking the next week or the whole week until AEW comes back of like, holy shit, did you see that match? And again, you get it why that main event sort of had to be cut short, so they weren't able to do as much as you could probably see with these two teams.
Yep.
But that's where the TV formula can be a little bit troubling and be difficult to work with. So the matches that get more time are probably generally going to be the better matches, and they had plenty of time to work to open this show. So a great match.
And had it not been for all the stuff that happened after Jungle Boy and Jericho, like you were saying, I would have said it because it had me on the edge of my seat. I was literally biting my nails, just wondering, oh my God, is he going to do it? Is he going to make it? Is he going to win? But just because of all that hokey stuff at the end, I just can't, in full honestly, say that it was my match of the night.
Yeah, I think that is exactly the point. I'm there with you. That it did have that excitement and that reason to call it one of the bigger matches of the night. But once you get into that situation of 5 more minutes and you think the match is resetting and no one can tell what is going on,
Yeah.
it really just takes it down a notch. So, yeah, definitely Wednesday night's main event, Lucha Brothers versus Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. If you missed tonight's episode of Dynamite and you're just catching us now, that is definitely a match that you should go out of your way and check out. For us, we'll also be going out of our way to check out Britt Baker and Chris Statlander just to see how those two women delivered on this show. But nonetheless, a good episode of Dynamite. We get a week off now, AJ. We'll be back definitely next, Monday? I don't know exactly how it'll work out. Not next Monday, not next Wednesday, but the following Monday for sure.
Yeah.
But in that time off, I will be uploading all of the interviews I have from StarCast. I will probably try to format that in some type of podcast in and of itself to upload some content for you guys next week. So don't be surprised if you do see a couple of episodes uploaded. But don't expect too much from us unless there is some type of breaking news that we feel that we'll tack on to one of those. That might be a couple of minutes. But
we'll cover the ratings, but, follow that on Twitter and everything.
yeah, well, that's probably something we'll do a quick bit on the ratings, throw it on to one of the interviews, and call it a day. But you have that to look forward to next week. Nonetheless, everyone enjoy your holidays. Thank you for being with us throughout this entire AEW year. It has been cool to gain these new fans and be able to connect with similar fans, like-minded fans, people who have the same interest as us. AJ, what were some of your favorite moments of AEW this year as we sort of round things up? We might be back before the end of the year, but still.
It's kind of amazing that this was the first thing that popped into my head, but Darby Allin versus Cody Rhodes was the first thing whenever you said that, like just Freudian, that I thought, man, that was such a good match. And also Dustin versus Cody Rhodes, Chris Jericho, Cody Rhodes, man. Cody Rhodes has been amazing this year.
What an incredible thing, too, with Cody. You would not have necessarily expected that going into the year or the many years before this if you had been told that Cody Rhodes would become what he's becoming. And it's funny, but it's true. And then just being able to have met Cody and see Cody work and just be a part of this whole thing within AEW has been such an exciting thing. And just to see Cody grow into that legit superstar, it just talking about it just bums me out knowing that they have this stipulation and that he's not champion and can't become champion. Hopefully they work their way around it, and I'm sure there is some story plan that they have to work with it, but it is a bit of a bummer, and makes you hate MJF that much more So
Yeah.
MJF is one that has been refreshing too to see. Till you love to hate him, you almost loved to love him for a little bit, and then by the end of the year, he was right back on everybody's shit list. So just a lot of cool things for AEW, and so I'm sure there are a lot of fans who can share that this year it's been refreshing to be able to see so many wrestlers that you probably stayed up until 2:00 in the morning to see 3 years ago or 2 years ago, or you'd have to watch Omega and all of them work Ring of Honor. Instead, you get to see these guys on a national stage, so it's cool.
Yep. It's awesome, man. AEW has been the best American wrestling television show in I don't know how, maybe since like the early days of TNA or even WCW, but it's just been such a breath of fresh air to see great wrestling with solid booking and solid stories on TV every week.
And the refreshing part of that is people can argue maybe that they think NXT is the best wrestling show, but the fact that AEW has been so good has forced that competition that everyone has talked about. It's the tried and true thing in professional wrestling, that competition breeds better wrestling, and that's why the WCW era was so much better, because it forced WWF to step their game up. And you see it every Wednesday now with almost 2 million people tuned into professional wrestling, tuned into either AEW or NXT, and diehard fans for both sides. So it's just great to see that there's a new product, and we're able to see these refreshing faces like Chris Statlander, Darby Allin, MJF, like just so many different people you weren't familiar with, Jungle Boy, Marco, Janela, like people you maybe even never thought would be on that national stage, that you're able to show just random people. So it's cool to see, and been nice to see something different within professional wrestling, and been cool to cover it as a group, and been cool to do it with one of my best buds. So thanks for everyone for supporting the podcast and tagging along with us every week. And again, I think we might be back before the end of the year. I don't know how the calendar works out, but I figured we should get in a lot of our end-of-the-year wrap-up stuff now. And shout out to our boy Phil for doing like a quarter of the episodes that he ever signed on to do. This was always supposed to be a trio, but I think his girlfriend pays more attention to AEW than he does now. No, they pay attention. They're a week behind, but that's why he can't join us now. But one day he'll return, maybe on one of the surprise episodes next week.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe next year. But nonetheless, thank you everyone for tuning into the All Elite podcast this year. Thank you for supporting. As always, you can hit that subscribe button to follow us and get notifications on our uploads. Our interviews are coming next week. AJ, where can they find you at on social media?
You can follow me on Twitter at BigMatchAJ, and you can follow me on Instagram at AJTheFitzy.
And as always, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at All Elite Podcast. You can check out our Instagram at All Elite Everything. You can check out our Facebook at Facebook.com/All Elite Podcast. Facebook.com/All Elite Pod. And you can always catch me on Twitter at All Elite Andy. Thank you guys for joining us and being with us throughout this whole year. Until next time, see ya.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.